So at the beginning of this year, I decided to sell most of my gear and shoot all of my video projects with an old Canon T3i. Now this was kind of a creative choice just as much as it was a financial choice. I was kind of struggling with a little bit of gear acquisition syndrome, or just buying stuff that I didn't need, that I really couldn't afford. And creatively, it was going to be a way for me to limit myself to an old camera that most people consider outdated and focus on the basics. Now realistically, I've kind of failed on the gear acquisition syndrome. I've actually probably got more camera bodies and lenses than I did at the beginning of this year, although it's all Canon stuff now. But I've definitely failed on the not buying part of my goal. But I have succeeded in mostly shooting my video projects with a Canon T3i. And in this video, I just want to share a few of the things that I have learned after using an old camera on purpose for most of this year. So I've had to swap lenses. I couldn't see what I was doing with that 50mm. But the first thing that I noticed when shooting with the Canon T3i so much, especially for talking headshots like this, is that not having continuous autofocus makes everything seem more serious than it actually is. I'm generally a silly dude. I don't take myself too seriously, but not having continuous autofocus means that when I'm doing a shot like this, I have to stand perfectly still or I lose focus. And I think that that can be a good and a bad thing. I think the good thing is that when you are watching somebody who's not using continuous autofocus, it looks a little more cinematic. And the reason that it does is because most of the stuff that we watch on TV or movies is somebody manually focusing the person that they're shooting. And the entire time that you're watching, they're going slightly in and out of focus. And that's more along the lines of what our eyes do. Our eyes don't have dual pixel autofocus. Our eyes don't pulse focus. That kind of stuff looks weird, but it can get tricky when you're filming yourself, because it does make everything a little more serious, because in the back of my mind, the entire time that I'm talking, I'm thinking, am I really in focus or not? You kind of lose some of the expression with the rigidity of the shot. It makes everything seem a little too serious. Another thing I've noticed is that I've pretty much went back to only filming in 30 frames per second. And I think that's because this camera has a really soft image. It's an older camera. You don't have a lot of resolution to play with. I've got to use a Sigma 18-35 to get a really sharp image from this thing. And I think that 30 frames per second looks a little bit better when you're watching your phone or watching a YouTube video than 24 frames per second. Another thing that I do, or I've noticed myself doing, is running a faster shutter speed. I normally keep my shutter speed around 1/100th instead of 1/64th, which would be about double the frame rate. A slightly faster shutter speed seems to give a little bit better of an image from an older camera like this. It looks a little bit sharper. Now that might be placebo, but that takes me to the next point. I constantly hear done is better than perfect, done is better than perfect. And that's probably true. That's probably true in professional things. But for things that deal with the creative side of life, I don't think that that's how we should be treating it. I think it should be fun is better than perfect. I think having fun should be the most important thing to you while you're making videos or shooting photography, unless you're getting paid for it. Now that's kind of a catch-22 on YouTube, because you have to think about, am I being entertaining? Am I getting people's attention? Is this what people want to watch? But using a T3i, it's so dang tough to make a video sometimes that by the end of it, you just have to remind yourself, I'm doing this because I like doing this. And that's kind of changed my attitude towards creating in general. I was getting really burnt out at the beginning of this year. I was putting a little too much pressure on myself. And I think shooting with this camera and making myself shoot with this camera, forcing myself to use something that's kind of hard to use compared to even a phone, it's reminded me that I enjoy this stuff. I think fun is more important than perfect. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little rant. I hope you guys are doing good. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you later.